Today we will continue to build custom form field control, and in this tutorial I will show you how to enable support of reactive forms, and we'll have a look at the error state management for our custom field. And besides this, I will show you the real life example of how to use the Typescript mixins to reuse some certain logic. My name is Dmitro Mrzhensky, subscribe to my channel, and we are getting started. Okay guys, let's go, and let me introduce first of all the small plan how we will proceed. So first of all we will implement control value accessor interface, then we will create some internal form, because as you can see our form control consists from the two fields, so our scope and our query string. So for this we will create the internal form, and then the next step would be to adjust our custom form field control to work with the parent form control. Then after this we will have a look how to handle the error state in our custom form field, and we will create the custom validator for this. And the last thing, there will be some bonus. I will show you really in-depth things, so stay here and let's get started. So let's go to our TypeScript component, and right here after the mat form field control I will say that we have to implement control value accessor like this. So we have to implement all necessary methods and fields. So VS Code did it for me right here. And if you are not aware what is control value accessor, I have the video. You can check this out later on. Let's get started to implement our methods one by one. So the first one, it's a write value. It's pretty straightforward. So we will do this value and we will assign object. And here instead of any, we will say that this is form field value, right? That's our interface which describes our value. Then register and change. So we have to create property called on change, this example, and it's gonna be the function which returns void. And this function also takes the value. It will be value, which also has the same interface like write value, and there we have to register this on change, and there will be this on change, and we assign the function which comes from function argument. The same we will do for register on touch. So let's create the same property on touch. So this function will mark our control as touched when we call this on touch function. Later on I will show you this everything. And register on touch will do the same on touch like we did before. So here I will assign the function. All right, here we go. And set disable state. Let's for now do it like disabled. We have already disabled, and we can set is disabled. All right, so here we go. I mean that we will change this anyway later on. The next thing we have to do is to replace our ng control. This one we have to inject one. So far it's null, but we have to go in our constructor and inject this ng control. So I will do it like this. It's gonna be optional. I will quickly explain later on what does it mean, everything. So yeah, like this, and we have to say that it's public. And what I'm doing here is I say that it's optional first. So if Angular will try to resolve the ng control and it doesn't exist, it's okay. It will be just null. It will not throw the error. And self means that resolve on the same level like this component. So it will not go up in the dependency injection chain. It will try to resolve on the same level. And if you want to know more about dependency injection in Angular, just check the Angular documentations for this. And yeah, now we inject this ng control, and the last thing what we have to do regarding this, it's the next. Inside the constructor we have to say if ng control is not equal now. So if we resolve ng control successfully, then inside this ng control we should get accessor, this value accessor, and to this value accessor we have to assign our current component, so this. And this is actually everything what we have to do about this. And you may ask why we are not using the approach which we used in the previous video about control value accessor. There we were providing this in providers section, like provide ng value accessor, and then we were using the existing class which was a pointer to our current component. The thing is that if we inject this ng control already has the ng value accessor, and if we will try to provide this here in providers, we will get the circular dependency error, and to avoid this we have to use this approach to provide the value accessor and assign the value accessor to this class. As I said earlier, we have to create the internal form for our custom form field control, right? So I will inject the form builder, and I will create the property called form for this, okay? And then let's find the ng on init and try to build our form. So I will say that to property form, please assign the group. It's going all right. And now we have to map our form property inside the Typescript file with the template. So inside the custom form field, I will do the next. So we have to define the group. So I will use ng container for this. So that's going to be a form group. Here we go, form group, and we have to move all our HTML inside this. So inside the ng container, here we go. And what? Okay, we have to import the reactive forms module, but let's do it a little bit later. So then we have to tell what. So our mat select, it's a form control name called scope, right? And then we have to do the same for our input, and it will be not a scope but query. Here we go. And now let's go to our advanced search control and import reactive forms module. Cool. Now this error should disappear, and it is. So now we created this internal form, and we have to adjust now a little bit our input called value, right? So now when we assign the value, we have to do not this, but we have to use our form. Oops. Our form, and here we have to call a method called batch value, this one, and we have to assign the value here. And also in getter we return not the value anymore, but we return form value, right? And we don't need our private value anymore. And did we forget something? Yes, we have to unassign value from here. So now we're working with our form, right? Here we set up the value, and here we in template we map our form with form controls. So we have to also adjust our form field container, and we have to create the form control. Then here will be our value which is scope, right? T and query. And also we have to attach our form control here. And also we have to remove the value, right? Because we are not working through this input anymore. We work with the form control. And now let's check if everything works fine. I will open our console and okay, so we have a couple of errors. It says cannot read property patch value of undefined. Let's figure out what's wrong there. Yeah, sure, because we do it in ngOnInit and it doesn't exist anymore. So let's cut it out here and put inside a constructor, and inside the constructor it should be fine for creation the form. Okay, now we see that it works, and we have also warning. It looks like you are using the disabled attribute with a reactive form directive. Yeah, because it makes sense, because we will use the form control to define our also disabled state. So now we kind of mixing up the thing. We're using template driven approach and reactive forms, which is like we have to choose something one. So I will remove disabled state for now as an input. And yeah, and now what else? Disabled attribute, but I removed. I didn't save it, or this is search from its container. I do it in the wrong place. Sorry, we have to do in the field control because we created a form inside our custom form field, and here we're using this template driven approach. Sorry, I confused between these two templates. So now if we reload, it's everything fine. The warning is gone. So let's then try to play a little bit with values what we provide. So if I, as example, provide here a T, and here in query I will type test. Actually, we should see preselected Austria and the query text inside what we see exactly right now. So there is our preselected value and our value here. Also, we can define a little bit differently, disabled, and we will say that it's true, so it should disable. And if we reload, we see this is the disabled state, but we still can type because we have to adjust our form field control, not container, and we have to inside this, where is this, our set disabled state, right? And remove this, and inside we have to also disable our form. So we will say that this form disable, right? And we also have to run change detection. That's what I forgot. Change state changes. Here we go. So next. Now, if we try reload and try to click, we see everything is disabled, everything is blocked. We cannot interact with this anymore. That's cool. So let's revert a little bit these changes, and we'll leave these initial values here. And here is empty string. And the next thing would be, I believe, the error handling. So let's try to implement a validation for our custom form field, and we will try to implement the error matcher. Error matcher, if you don't know, as example, if we go to material Angular and there we find the input, here we go. Angular material has the thing called ErrorState matcher, where you can define logic when we actually have to kind of highlight our input that it's invalid. And we will see this in action in a few seconds. So let's go back to our DS file, and we will be working with our error state. So let's make it as a getter first of all, false for now. And here I have to add get. Cool. And the next thing, if you didn't notice, they're using the providers. So it means that we can inject this errorStateChecker. So default one, yeah. Angular material has the default matcher. So let's try to do this. So this errorStateChecker has errorState method. And inside we have to provide the control, our form control, then form or ng form or null. So it's kind of optional. So let's use our ng control, and there will be null because we don't have the form. At least for this use case, we don't need it. White complaints, abstract control. It is abstract control. Okay, we have to just cast it as a form control using this as. So this our errorStateChecker will use this method to define if it's valid or not. So let's see it in action. If we reload, happens nothing. Yeah, makes sense because we didn't implement the custom validation, right? So we have to provide the next thing inside the form field container. So for this form control, as a second parameter, we have to provide some validators, right? But if we provide some, I don't know, required, it will not work because we have the object, and object always is positive. So it's not null or something like this. So we have to create our custom validators, and let's do it right now. So as you may already know that validators, it's just stupid function. So let's create a function. Here we go, and it accepts parameter called control. Cool, and this function should return just either null or some object with some certain parameters. So cool, so now we can use our advanced search validator. We can pass it as the second argument. Let's try to focus and blur, and nothing is working. Let's think why it could be. Well, I think I know guys what's happening. I know it. So we in our form field, you remember we implemented this on touch, and default behavior happens when the form is touched. So it should be invalid and it should be touched, and we don't call this on touch method, and that's why we don't see the effect. So what I will do now, it's where is our focus monitor, and I will use one more time this. So focus monitor, we will monitor our input. So there is input, and we will use the pipe, and we take the one. So we will take the first emission of the focus. So once we focused first time, we will say that it is touched. So yeah, this on touch, good, something like this. And now if we focus on it, yeah, we mark this as attached. So our default errorStateChecker is being triggered, and now we see that we see this red border around our form control. So now it's working. Now let's maybe try to replace our StateChecker with the custom one, and you can easily do this by creating the class. So let's create the custom class, and this class should only implement our interface errorStateChecker. So let's do it here, and of course it will be complaining that we have to implement. So we have to implement errorState, and let's simplify a little bit. I will remove this part for our example. So we have only control here, and we should return true or false, depends on condition of our control. So we want to, as example, highlight our custom field with the red when the control is dirty, means the value was changed already, so touched it when we focus on the input, and it becomes dirty when we start to type something. So if it's dirty and the control is invalid, only in this case we will trigger the mechanism which highlights our form field into the red. So now we have to provide it. So there are a couple of ways to provide. First one, it's in the providers, so we can do very similar thing like before, provide errorStateChecker, and we will say that use class and our custom errorMatcher class. And now if we reload and we focus and blur, nothing happens because we have to make our form field control dirty. So I will type something, so now it's dirty. And now if we do blur, nothing happens again. What's wrong? Come on. Yes. To make it dirty, we have to change the value of form control, right? And to change the value of form control, we have to trigger this onChange function. And we don't do it yet, right? So we have to somewhere inside maybe engine init, we will have to subscribe to changes of this form. This is observable, and we have to subscribe and get the value what comes from our internal form, and then we have to propagate it with onChange, and we have to pass this value. Of course, don't forget to subscribe, implement some mechanism with take until or something, so don't leave it as it is. Always kill your subscription when you destroy your components, but just to simplify things, I will leave it as it is. And now if we go to browser and we will try to type, and then I erase everything, and now we see that our form field was marked with the error because now it's dirty and it's invalid. And this actually triggers our custom errorMatcher, right? Oops, what I have done. Yeah, this one, custom errorMatcher. And you can actually implement it also with the input. So you can create like custom or errorMatcher. You can name it as the same way like in the input, how they errorStateChecker. Yeah, here we go. You see they use it as an input, so you can also create some additional input and here define this errorStateChecker, and it's the type errorStateChecker. And then you inside the errorState you could do something like this. So you can create a constant called matcher, and then you can check if errorMatcher exists, then will be used errorStateChecker, otherwise will be used errorMatcher, which is default. So it's in case if we didn't provide this input state matcher, and then you could use something like this, right? So, but I will revert it. I just wanted to show you how to do it with input, and I will remove this as well. Cool. Now we know how to handle the errors, but now the time for bonus section, which I promised in the very beginning. And inside this bonus section, I will show you how to reuse some logic from Angular material, which has been already implemented by Angular material team. And in particular, I will show you how to reuse this errorState logic. And let's start from source code. All right, so I will go to the GitHub, And here is our repo, and inside source, and we have to find material, I believe, and there should be core. And inside the core, let's find some folder called common behaviors, right? And inside common behaviors, we see different files, and we are interested in this error state. And this error state, if we have a look inside, we will see the error state matcher, we will see error state, and also state changes. So if we have a look at this, we will see that this is exactly what we have in our class and including this state changes subject, right? And here's the update error state method, which actually reminds us something what we implemented right now inside our error state, right? So here is our error matcher, which is in this case default error state matcher, and there's error state matcher property, so our kind of input. And also they doing the similar check which we did before. And it makes sense to reuse it, especially because Angular team does it for implementation of matInit and material select components. So why we cannot, right? So let's try to reuse this piece of logic, and to achieve this, we will use mixins, which is some kind of advanced feature of TypeScript. And mixins, it's kind of, if you come from PHP background, PHP 7, I think, if I remember right, has traits, and the mixins works exactly the same. Or if you come from the Scala, or as far as I remember, Scala also has something like mixins or traits in PHP. If you're using Scala, please write in the comments if I'm right, if you have such a functionality. So let's try to implement our mixin. So first of all, let's create the class. Here is, so far it's going to be empty class. Then I will create the constant. Const. I will name it as pretty much similar to this, but I will use the Angular material team convention. They name this mixin class with the underscore, and there will be search input mixin base class, and it will get the type can update error state constructor, and the value will be actually our mixin, which is mixin error state. And this mixin error state takes as an argument our base class, and then we will import this, and it takes this class. It complains because we didn't implement has error state, and this has error state waits that we have these properties inside the constructor. So let's create a constructor, and we will place it everything here. The one thing I have to do is to import all necessary stuff. There we go. Now we see that it doesn't complain, and now we have to just extend our search input mixin base. And if we go here before implements, we say that it extends our search input mixin base. Now we have to adjust our class a little bit because we don't have some properties, and in particular this where it is parent form. Also, we don't have parent form group, and this we have, and gcontrol we have. So we have to provide it. Let's do it right now. So these are optional parameters. So will use this optional, and the same I will do for this part. All right. And then we have to call class super, and inside this super we have to provide this error matcher as well. And okay, let's rename it to have the proper naming convention. So I will replace this with the default error matcher, and I will do it like this and put super inside. Then we'll do the same for parent form and also for parent form group, and also the last but not least ng control. Here we go. Oh, I believe I did mistake. I have to provide it private, because otherwise it will complain it will not be as a property of the class. So now it should be fine, I believe, right? And what we have to adjust, we have to remove our current validation of this error state, because it will be provided by this mixin. Yeah, this is our error state matcher and also the error state, so we don't need it anymore. We can remove it, and then we will be able to actually now I can do it like this. Whew. And now inside some lifecycle hook, I have to trigger this method called update error state. And I would say that we have to call it inside ng-do-check. So this lifecycle hook will be called every time the change detection runs. And this is how Angular Material team implemented this in material input as example. So let's follow this approach, and I will implement do check lifecycle hook, and here below somewhere we have to implement, let's do it after ng on init, and I will implement this ng do check like this. And here inside we will say that if exists this ng control, then we will trigger update error state. You see, even autocomplete shows me that this method exists. So time to check. Let's go to our input. Okay, is error state of null, cannot read. What's wrong with this? Cannot read property is error state. It looks like that our error state matcher was not resolved, or okay, there is no how it's called accessor modifier, and if we have accessor modifier here, it will create it as a class property, right? Otherwise it will be just like a variable. It will be accessible here, but it will not be the class property. So we have to mark it as a public or private, whatever. And now we see that if we focus and then I will type, and everything is working as it was working before. And also we saw that this mixin has also these state changes, so we can also remove this. What else? Let's have a look at the source code, what we can remove error state matcher. So error state matcher also we can remove, or we didn't even have this. Yeah, we removed it before, right? And what else? Error state that we have removed. So yeah. Okay, that was it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video and you have learned something new today. It was really interesting in my opinion. It was such a in-depth topic, and I think now you have better understanding of how to build custom form field controls. And if you liked my video, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. And if you didn't like, please let me know in comments why exactly and how I could improve my content for you. Otherwise, I wish you a productive week, take care, and see you in the future.